My name is Catherine. For 24 years, I believed silence meant love, until my husband's last words cut me open. Never go to the farm. Promise me. At his funeral, I learned he had hidden more than a place. He had hidden the truth from me, burying secrets so deep I was never meant to find them. That wound, the man I trusted most, keeping me in the dark, still burns sharper than grief itself. And it was only the beginning. The office smelled faintly of polished wood and old paper, a place where every sound seemed to echo with finality. I sat stiffly across from Mr. Winters, twisting the corner of my black scarf between my fingers, the silence of the room pressing down on me as though it knew how hollow I felt inside. His measured voice carried across the desk, steady but heavy, as he repeated words I had once heard spoken with a startling intensity. Never go to the farm, Catherine. Promise me. The sound of that forbidden command settled like a stone in my chest. I had honored it for decades, without ever understanding why. Now Joshua was gone, and here I was, surrounded by legal folders and stamped envelopes, as if his entire life could be reduced to a pile of documents. Mr. Winters adjusted his glasses and slid a small wooden box toward me. Its weight was disproportionate to its size, as though something inside could alter the course of everything I thought I knew. I opened it with trembling hands. Inside lay a brass key, cold against my palm, attached to a maple leaf keychain. Next to it rested a sealed envelope, my name written across the front in Joshua's careful, familiar handwriting. For a long moment I simply stared, unable to move, as though opening it would mean admitting how little I truly knew about the man I had spent half my life with. Take your time, Mr. Winters murmured, though his eyes revealed he already knew what the letter contained. My fingers broke the seal, and Joshua's voice seemed to speak through the page. He began with an apology for withholding truths too heavy for him to share while alive. He wrote of a place, Maple Creek Farm, a name I'd only ever heard in fragmented whispers when he spoke reluctantly of his Canadian childhood. He confessed he had bought it back 3 years earlier, pouring himself into its restoration, but forbade me to see it while he still breathed. As my eyes traced each line, disbelief and hurt tangled inside me. He had repurchased his childhood farm in secret, poured his energy into remaking it, and never told me. I read on, my pulse hammering. He explained that the farm, once a ruin, was now transformed into something beautiful, something he had envisioned not for himself, but for me. My throat tightened at his words. I built this for you. Cat, go, just once. You'll see why. The key in my palm grew heavier as the letter revealed more. The land, he said, had recently become valuable, astonishingly so. Oil had been discovered in the region 18 months earlier, and companies had already approached him with offers. He had refused them all, though the sums were staggering. Every decision, every refusal had been calculated with me in mind. I sat frozen, trying to grasp the enormity of what he had done. Anger flickered through the grief. Anger that he had borne this burden alone. Anger that he had hidden the truth of his health. Tucked within the lines of love and apology was an unspoken confession. The time he thought he had left was slipping away, and he had chosen not to share that cruel reality with me. The bitterness of that omission stung sharper than the allure of any inheritance. I folded the letter carefully, pressing it to my chest as tears blurred the words. Mr. Winters cleared his throat softly, drawing me back. The deed has already been transferred to your name, he said. All taxes have been paid for 5 years. You are the sole legal owner now. His voice dropped lower. You should also know, His brothers have already filed to contest the will. They claim he was not of sound mind when he repurchased the property." The room tilted slightly. His brothers, men Joshua rarely spoke of, except with a tension that hardened his gentle features, were already circling like vultures. My fingers curled tighter around the key, the brass imprinting into my skin. Joshua had left me more than a piece of land. He had left me a challenge, a riddle wrapped in love and secrecy, daring me to step into a world he had deliberately hidden. I rose from the chair, still clutching the key, my voice steadier than I felt. "I need to see it," I said. Mr. Winters studied me over the rims of his glasses, then gave a slow nod. "Then I suggest you go at once. Some doors only open while the invitation is fresh." As I stepped out of his office into the thin autumn sunlight, the box pressed against my chest. I knew the quiet life I thought I had returned to was already gone. The farm Joshua had once forbidden me to see now stood waiting, its gates holding secrets he hadn't lived long enough to confess. And whether I was ready or not, I was about to discover why. The road narrowed into gravel as I drove deeper into the Alberta countryside, my pulse quickening with every mile. Fields of maple leaves blazed gold under the autumn sun, a cruel beauty against the heaviness in my chest. When the iron gates finally appeared, bold letters spelling Maple Creek Farm across their arch, my breath caught. I gripped the steering wheel so hard my knuckles whitened. This was it, the place I had been forbidden to see. The brass key slid into the lock with surprising ease. The gates swung open, and the sight beyond stunned me. Rolling pastures stretched wide and unbroken, fences gleaming with fresh paint, and at the heart of it all stood a grand farmhouse, its white siding crisp against the deep blue sky. This was no derelict ruin, no haunted childhood relic. This was an estate reborn. I eased the car up the long drive, gravel crunching beneath the tires, until the house towered before me. The porch wrapped around its front like an embrace, windows gleaming as though someone had polished them that very morning. My hands shook as I fit the second key into the door. With a click, it yielded, and I stepped into a world I hadn't known Joshua was building for me all along. The entry opened into soaring ceilings and polished wood beams. But what stole my breath was not the architecture. Everywhere, on the walls, on shelves, on tables, were images of horses, paintings of them thundering across fields, bronze sculptures capturing their raw power, photographs framed with simple elegance, each one different, yet each one alive with motion. My throat closed around a sob. Horses had been my passion, my secret dream I had set aside long ago to make room for family and obligations. Joshua had never shared the interest himself, never once hinted that he truly understood. Yet here it was, room after room transformed into a gallery of everything I had once loved. On the desk near a wide window rested a silver laptop, closed, with a single red rose lying across its lid. My trembling fingers brushed the pedals before I lifted the screen. The login prompt glowed, waiting. I typed in the date of our first meeting, followed by my maiden name, the way he had told me in his letter. The computer accepted it instantly, as if it had been waiting only for me. A video filled the screen. Joshua's face appeared, not the weary, drawn man I had kissed goodbye in a hospital bed, but vibrant and smiling, his eyes crinkled at the edges with that crooked grin that had undone me the first time I saw it. "Hello, Kat," he said softly, and my chest caved. "If you're watching this, then I'm gone. But I wanted you to know, I've left you something. I've made a video for every single day of the year after my death. 365 messages, one for each morning when you wake up alone." I covered my mouth, tears spilling unchecked. as he continued, "There's something I never told you. 3 years ago, I was diagnosed with hypertrophic cardiomyopathy. The doctors said 2 to 5 years. Maybe. I didn't want you to watch me fade, didn't want Jenna to live under the shadow of what was coming. I chose to keep it to myself. Selfish, maybe. But I wanted our last years together to be full, not bound by countdowns." He leaned closer to the camera, expression tender. "I used that time to build this place for you. Every decision, every detail, your horses, your art, your dreams. This farm is my gift, Kat. My apology, my love, and my legacy. I built it for you." The screen blurred through my tears. My knees weakened, and I pressed a hand against the desk to steady myself. All around me, the horses, the polished wood, the rose. It wasn't just decoration. It was a love letter carved into every corner. I sank into the chair before the laptop, letting the sobs come. He had carried this secret for years, had borne his illness alone, had poured his strength into creating a sanctuary he knew he would never live to enjoy. And now, it was mine to face. The hum of an engine shattered the silence. Tires crunched over gravel outside, the sound wrong in its timing, wrong in its insistence. My head snapped toward the window. A black SUV rolled to a stop in the driveway, sleek and deliberate, and 3 men climbed out. Even from a distance, I saw the resemblance. The same sharp jawlines, the same dark hair streaked with silver, the same stride that spoke of entitlement rather than hesitation. Robert, the eldest, carried himself with authority. Alan's eyes were calculating, his leather briefcase swinging casually at his side. David lingered a step behind, silent, unreadable. A knock pounded against the door, sharp and commanding. "Mrs. Mitchell!" a voice called, accented faintly with the Canadian lilt Joshua's words sometimes carried when he was tired. "We know you're inside. We need to talk. About the farm." The sound froze me. Mr. Winters's warning echoed back. They had already contested the will, claiming Joshua hadn't been competent when he bought the property. My chest tightened with fury. He had been more rational than any of them would ever be. This was never about competence. This was about greed. Another knock, heavier. I backed away, heart racing, gaze darting to the laptop still glowing on the desk. Almost on cue, the screen shifted and another video began to play. Joshua's voice filled the room again, steady and grave. "Kat, if you're hearing this, then they've come. I bought this farm from our father when he was drowning in debt. He swore me to secrecy, and I kept it, because my brothers always believed they were entitled to everything. They never cared for this land until oil was discovered. Now they'll stop at nothing. Don't trust them. Don't open the door." The pounding outside grew more insistent, the voices louder, demanding. My hands shook as I shut the laptop and stepped back from the entryway. Through the window, I saw them, Robert's face hard, Alan gesturing sharply, David watching with hawk-like stillness. They weren't here to grieve. They weren't here to remember the brother I had loved for half my life. They were here for what Joshua had left behind. I swallowed hard, locking the door and backing deeper into the house. Joshua's warning thundered in my ears. The fight had begun, and the battlefield was the very home he had built for me. The glow of the laptop still lingered in the dim light when my phone buzzed against the desk. I wiped at my face and answered without thinking. Jenna's voice came through sharp, charged with anger. "Why didn't you tell me about Maple Creek Farm? Why am I hearing about it from my uncles?" The word uncles struck like a slap. My heart lurched. "Jenna, how do you—" "They called me," she cut in, her tone clipped and cold. "They said this place is family property, that you and I both have rights to it. They don't want to fight, they just want what's fair." I clutched the edge of the desk, stunned. They had gone after her, knowing she was grieving, knowing she was raw. Sweetheart, listen to me. Nothing they're telling you is the truth. Please wait until we can talk. But the line went dead. My own reflection stared back at me in the dark screen of the phone, pale, drawn, and already losing ground to the men outside. Almost on cue, the laptop screen blinked, and another video opened. Joshua's eyes looked straight into mine, steady and unflinching. Kat, I need to tell you something I never could when I was alive. When I was 19, they stole my share of our father's estate, signed my name to documents I never touched. When I threatened to expose them, they turned it back on me, said they'd drag me down with them, ruin me if I spoke. I left, and I never went back. They've stolen from me before. If they approach Jenna, it isn't out of love. It's strategy. The words hollowed me out. I had known his childhood had been cruel, but not like this. I pressed my hand to my chest as the video ended. Outside the window, shadows moved across the porch, the brothers circling like wolves. Inside, my daughter was slipping away from me, their voices in her ear. I felt the fracture deepening. The fight was no longer just about land or money. It was about history, about patterns repeating, about the risk of losing Jenna to the same lies that had once driven Joshua into exile. Sleep never came. Hours later, I wandered through the darkened stables, the soft rustle of hay beneath my shoes. That was where Ellis found me, stepping out of the tack room with his lantern. The lines of his weathered face, grave. There's something Mr. Mitchell told me to keep hidden, he said quietly. He asked me to show you only if it became absolutely necessary. I think that time has come. He led me to the oldest barn, the one that hadn't been repainted like the others. Dust hung heavy in the air, the boards groaning with age. Ellis set down his lantern, pushed aside a stack of hay bales, and revealed a trap door set into the packed dirt floor. He bent, lifted it, and a wooden staircase yawned downward into shadow. My breath caught as I followed him down. At the bottom, Ellis flicked a switch, and fluorescent light hummed to life. The air was cool, tinged with concrete. Before me stretched a fortified chamber carved into the earth, a war room. The walls were lined with filing cabinets and maps, every surface cluttered with evidence Joshua had gathered. Geological surveys, marked in thick red ink, financial records, sworn statements from former employees. On one wall hung a detailed topographical map of Maple Creek, veins of crimson running across its western acres. I stepped closer, knees weakening. The West, I whispered, the very land his brothers had called worthless. It was riddled with oil reserves, larger than anything I had imagined. Ellis nodded grimly. He confirmed it with 3 independent geologists, kept it locked away down here so no one could twist it. My gaze wandered to the far wall, where a framed photograph hung. A teenage Joshua stood beside a chestnut horse, his arm looped around its neck, his face lit with a rare, unguarded joy. My throat tightened. Phoenix, Ellis said softly. His brothers sold him when Joshua was away at school. Did it just to hurt him? I reached up, brushing the glass with my fingertips. The cruelty of that betrayal echoed in the present, colliding with the greed that now pounded at my doors. The farm, the oil, the secrets, they were all pieces of the same battle Joshua had been fighting his whole life. Ellis's voice dropped, steady but fierce. He didn't want you walking into this war unarmed. He built this room for you, so you'd have the truth when they came. I stood in the cold hum of the lights, surrounded by maps, records, and the weight of my husband's foresight. For the first time since his death, I felt something shift inside me. The grief was still there, but it was threaded now with steel. If they wanted war. Joshua had already placed the weapons in my hands. The growl of engines shattered the morning calm. From the porch, Ellis and I watched as the black SUV returned, this time accompanied by a gleaming sedan. The doors opened, and out stepped Robert, Alan, and David, followed by a man in a tailored suit whose watch alone looked like it cost more than most homes. Robert's voice carried smoothly across the gravel. "Catherine, we've come to make peace. This is Harrison Wells, CEO of Northern Extraction. He's here to help us find a fair solution." Inside, Wells spread maps across my dining table as though he already owned it. His voice was polished, persuasive, as he described the enormous value of the oil beneath the land. Robert leaned forward with a practiced smile. "Here's what we propose. 1/3 for you, 1/3 for Jenna, 1/3 for us. Everyone wins." Their words dripped with manufactured generosity, but my eyes caught on the map. The western acres were conspicuously missing. "Strange," I said evenly. "Why isn't the West included?" Alan gave a dismissive laugh. "Worthless rock. Nothing to bother with." Before I could respond, a familiar voice broke in from the doorway. "Jenna." She stepped into the room, her expression bright with a hope that twisted my heart. "Mom, this is millions of dollars. Why are you resisting? Why not just agree?" Her eyes searched mine, so certain she was seeing reason, not realizing she was standing inside a trap. I saw the distance widening between us, the wedge her uncles had driven deeper. Ellis's voice, low but steady, cut through the tension. "Mr. Joshua warned you, ma'am. If they come smiling, they're already hiding the knife." His words sliced the air, and I felt the truth settle like iron in my bones. Wells wasn't here for balance. He was here to crush me. And this whole performance was a carefully staged ambush. The next morning, I stood before the mirror, fastening the buttons of a sleek black suit. The woman staring back at me was not the widow they expected to find. She was sharper, steadier, prepared for battle. The dining room had been transformed into a boardroom, documents fanned neatly across the long table. A projector hummed softly, waiting. Glasses of water lined the edges like markers of civility. When the brothers arrived with Wells at their side, Robert's grin widened. "We know you'll see reason this time. Catherine." I clicked the remote. The projector lit up with a geological map. "You called the West useless?" My voice cut the silence. "This," I traced the crimson veins marked across the land, "is the richest deposit on the property, verified by 3 independent surveys." The room froze. Wells's brow furrowed, the polish slipping from his face. "You told me," he snapped at Robert, anger breaking through. The door opened before anyone could recover. Thomas Reeves stepped in, flanked by my attorney. His presence filled the room with quiet authority. "Mrs. Mitchell, thank you for allowing Western Plains to review the real data. It's clear Northern Extraction hasn't been transparent." Color drained from Robert's face. Wells shot to his feet, fury in his voice. "You swore exclusivity. Do you realize what you've done?" I leaned back, calm against the storm. My eyes turned to Jenna. "Do you see now? They were ready to sell everything out from under us." Her gaze darted between me and her uncle's, confusion and betrayal warring across her features. For the first time, doubt cracked the certainty they had fed her. The power in the room shifted like a tide. I wasn't their victim anymore. I was their opponent. Armed with the truth Joshua had left me, and I could feel his hand guiding my every move. The dining room no longer resembled a place for family meals. The long table stretched between us like a battlefield line. At one end, I sat with Ellis steady at my side and my attorney poised with quiet confidence. Jenna, torn but present. sat just beyond them. Across from us, Robert, Alan, and David leaned in together, their faces set, while Harrison Wells lounged like a general waiting to claim victory. Robert spoke first, his tone smooth but edged with arrogance. "Let's settle this without dragging it through the courts. We divide what's here, clean and simple. 1/3 for you, 1/3 for Jenna, 1/3 for us." Everyone walks away satisfied. The silence that followed was thick. Then I lifted the green folder from my lap and slid it across the polished wood to the officer seated at the end as a witness. The folder landed with a quiet thud, its weight louder than any words. "Joshua prepared this," I said evenly. The officer opened it, flipping through the contents: notarized deeds, purchase agreements, tax receipts stamped and paid, every page a nail in the coffin of their claims. Wells's composure faltered. He glanced from the documents to the brothers, his face darkening. "If this is accurate," he hissed, "then Northern Extraction has been deceived." His glare cut through Robert, who shifted uneasily. I reached for the remote, pressing play. The screen at the far end of the room flickered to life. Joshua's voice filled the silence, steady as he laid bare the truth of his youth, their theft of his inheritance, their betrayal 3 decades earlier. His words carved the room open. Jenna's shoulders shook. Tears streamed down her face as she rose, her fingers stabbing toward her uncle's. "He forgave you, but I won't. This ends now." The room cracked apart in that moment. Wells shoved back his chair, fury written across his features. "We're done here," he snapped, storming out and leaving the brothers exposed, abandoned. I met their stunned silence with ice. "This legacy isn't yours to slice apart. It belonged to Joshua. And now, it belongs to me." The silence that followed Wells's abrupt exit was suffocating. Papers lay scattered across the table, the projector still casting Joshua's frozen image on the wall. For the first time since they'd arrived, Robert's mask of control cracked. His voice came low, rough with strain. "Catherine, wait. There's something you need to know." Alan and David both turned sharply, as though they hadn't expected him to speak. Robert's eyes, usually cold and commanding, wavered with something almost like fear. He pressed a hand to his chest, his breathing uneven. "I've been diagnosed with the same heart condition Joshua had, hypertrophic cardiomyopathy. It's progressing fast." His gaze shifted to Jenna. His words weighted with desperation. "She could be a match. My doctors say. Her bloodline gives me a chance." The air left the room. Jenna's hand flew to her mouth, eyes wide in disbelief. Alan seized the moment, his lawyer's instincts sharpening into a plea. "We are still family. Catherine, whatever else has happened, we share the same blood. Help us save Robert. Joshua would have wanted that." I stared at them, the bile of their audacity rising in my throat. They had stolen from Joshua, schemed against me, turned my daughter against her own mother, and now they dared to frame her as nothing more than a solution to Robert's failing heart. Without a word, I reached into my folder and drew out a single envelope, worn at the edges. I slid it across the table until it rested in front of Robert. "Joshua knew this day would come," I said quietly. "This is for you." His hand trembled as he picked it up, breaking the seal with unsteady fingers. He unfolded the letter, and as his eyes moved over the page, the color drained from his face. His breath hitched audibly, the paper rattling in his grip. Alan leaned in, impatient. "What is it? What did he write?" Robert's lips moved soundlessly before he finally managed to choke out. "Mother didn't die giving birth to Joshua. She left. She left because she couldn't survive with Father." His voice cracked, disbelief and grief colliding. The room tilted, reality shifting beneath them. Joshua's words on the page revealed more. Their father had carried on a second life in secret. He had remarried, fathering 2 other children who shared their rare genetic strain, 2 half-siblings who existed beyond the borders of Maple Creek, out there living lives none of them had known about, 2 siblings who could carry the very key to Robert's survival. David slumped back, his normally stoic face slack with shock. Alan muttered as though trying to convince himself, "It's not possible, we can't." His voice trailed into silence. Robert's shoulders shook, his eyes wild as he clutched the letter tighter. The power he had wielded all his life, the entitlement that had framed his every action, crumbled under the revelation. They were not the sole heirs, not the unbroken line of Mitchell pride. Their empire of blood and birthright had been a facade. I let the silence stretch, then leaned forward, my voice firm and unyielding. If you need hope, look to the truth that's finally in your hands. But understand this, my daughter will never be reduced to a donor, a bargaining chip for your survival. Jenna is not the answer to your desperation. Robert's head fell, his knuckles white against the paper. The brothers sat hollow, stripped of their leverage, their legacy fractured by the words of the one man they had sought to destroy. For the first time since Joshua's death, I felt the tide shift fully to my side. The truth was no longer just my shield, it was their undoing, and as they sat in stunned silence, I realized Joshua had anticipated everything, down to this final blow. The slam of the gate echoed across the fields as their cars disappeared down the long drive, leaving only silence in their wake. On the porch, the 3 of us stood in the fading light, Ellis steady and quiet, Jenna trembling at my side. Then, without hesitation, she stepped into my arms. For the first time in days, there was no resistance, no wedge between us. Her voice was a whisper against my shoulder. Dad believed you would win, and he was right. Later, in the studio Joshua had built for me, I set a blank canvas on the easel. My hands no longer shook. The first strokes came with certainty, layers unfolding one after another. The background bloomed into a wasteland of muted tones, the past in all its ruin. Above it, brighter colors rose, the vibrancy of the present reclaimed. And in the foreground, I painted 3 riders, Joshua, myself, and Jenna, moving forward together, the lines strong and unbroken. Through the open windows, the thunder of hooves carried across the land. 6 horses raced the horizon, their silhouettes ablaze in the crimson sunset, unbridled and free. I opened the laptop one final time. Joshua's face appeared, his voice warm and steady. Legacy isn't money, Kat, it's possibility. The tears came, but this time they did not burn. I smiled, closing the lid with gentle hands, and whispered into the quiet, "Until tomorrow, my love." This was more than survival. It was freedom, his gift, my inheritance, our legacy reborn.